Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tea Time with Danica Favorite. And today we're just going to jump into the tea because I'm actually excited about it. So I bought this cute little tea when I was in Ljubljana, Slovenia. So as part of my experiment that I was going to do a whole book about, but unfortunately there wasn't enough material to write a book, was like how I was using AI to help plan the trip. And first of all, I think I have mentioned this a couple of times that Google was actually really disappointing. Like I would think that Google, because we use it for maps and all these other things, that it would actually be really good. Google was the worst. And so anyway, Ljubljana supposedly had all these great tea places, and Google lied about that. Just saying. And a lot of the businesses, and again, maybe it's because that part of Europe doesn't update as often, but a lot of the tea places that it recommended, and I would find it on maps, when I got there, it was something that had been closed like years before. So very interesting and odd. However, I did go one day when I was at Lake Bled. I did go. And we had a little break to go get lunch. I wasn't hungry, but I did go to a really nice tea house and had some tea. I did not buy any tea when I was there, which I kind of regret because the lady was so lovely and so helpful. But at the time, I thought the next day I'm going to go on like this tea house tour and see all the tea places. Did not get to see it. But this is, I went to a monastery, to actually a church, but then if you paid extra you could go to the museum and the monastery library, to which of course I said yes please. And they were selling this tea, and it's the Viridian Sodni, and so the spelling, you can see the spelling, I'll get it really close, that's actually pronounced chai. So I think it's so interesting that so many different places in the world actually call tea chai. And so I've always known this, but a lot of people are like, oh, let's go out for a chai tea, because they're thinking they're like Indian chai, but chai just means tea. So they're just asking for a tea, which I think is always funny. But I just thought it was really funny that as I was looking this up, a lot of languages call tea chai. And so anyway, it was in this cute little packet that I got. But when I opened it up, it actually is this, and it's a little picture of a monk. And so apparently, like, these are all the different herbs and things grown by the monks. And so then they sell it at the abbey. So I thought, this is super cool. I have to buy it. And so the ingredients are, I had to look this up on Google Translate. So see, Google, I still use you for some things, but really. It's pineapple, lemon, orange, pomegranate, mint, hibiscus, and cinnamon. And so I am a big fan of hibiscus and cinnamon. So I'm like, yay, I want that. And then here is, like, look at how pretty those are. I just love doing this and showing off how pretty all the little things. And you can actually see, like, this is like a little hibiscus leaf. You can actually see the little leaf from the flower, which I think is great. And they've got some really nice cinnamon chunks and all the different dried fruits. And I think what I like about this, and what I always like to remind people about with tea, is especially the herbal teas. And yes, I know they're technically not tea, but we'll just go with that. And this is the pretty lovely red color that it's steeped to, which is courtesy of the hibiscus. But really, any dried herb or fruit or anything like that that you think is yummy or would be yummy, you can turn that into a tea, and it's delicious. And so, it's funny. I was just kind of talking about some of the particulars like chai, and this is technically not tea, and all of those things. And what I find interesting about that is I know people who, me calling my herbal tea a tea, would be really triggered by that because, again, not a tea, because it doesn't have actual tea leaves in it. And then, even the chai GT thing, people get really irritated by that. And, last week I talked a lot about the whole Substack AI thing, and I was super triggered last week. And And I kind of did talk about this idea of, if this is triggering you, what is behind that trigger? When you are feeling really triggered or you're feeling resistance, what does that mean? And so I talked somewhat about this in the post that I sent out this week about like the end of the month and all of that. But I was doing a RIM session, and it was really interesting to me because, the instructor was like, you just keep resisting going deeper and you need to take a look at this. And I was like, okay. And, I spent some time with that resistance, and I was like, like, what is going on? And I did. I sat and I figured out, the resistance really was just that I didn't have the capacity at that point to go deeper. Like, my own internal stuff was already stirred and already dealing with a lot of stuff. And I just didn't have room for that. And so it's really gotten me down this rabbit hole of thinking about resistance and thinking about our triggers and things, because as I have mentioned before, our triggers are our teachers. And so when something gets really triggering to you and makes you angry, and I'll use the chai example because I think that it's so common. Like, I remember being with somebody, and like, I had already just known that about chai. Again, tea lover, pretty much know. I mean, I'm not going to say I know everything about tea because I don't, but I know a lot. And so most of the time, it's hard to surprise me with your tea facts, but I like them. So please tell me. And even if it's something I already know, I want to like engage with it and be like, oh yeah, that's so cool. And I want to hear what you know and learn from you and all that. But like, it was really interesting because I was out with someone and they like went off on this whole chai thing, and they were so angry that people call it chai tea. And I was like, I know, but like, they don't know. And I would also say that I kind of understand the distinction a little bit, because if you are having like an Indian chai, it's going to have other things besides the tea leaves in it. And depending on like who makes it and which varieties and all of those different things, it's going to have all these other spices plus the tea. And so I kind of understand, like, some people want to hear that distinction. And if you say, hey, we're going to have chai, I have in my head a specific expectation of what that looks like. And so I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. But when I was thinking about this, this person was so angry because like, they really are very into like just being precise and being correct about things. And that was just really like brushing up against their need for correctness. And of course, this is before I've had all these thoughts, but I was thinking back to that person, and I was like, what is that inside of that person that they need to deal with about not being correct, about not having the correct information or not sharing that correct information? Because it's something, there is something there. And then, be curious, dig deep, discover what's happening here. And so when I was looking at my resistance this week, I was really feeling that. And I was a little bit triggered by being called out for having this resistance. And I'm like, but I'm trying to honor that. Like, that's the thing that, we spend so much time going through like all these different lessons in life. And for me, I spent most of my life going against what was natural for me and doing what everyone expected me to do, and not listening to my intuition and not listening to what was important for me. And so the thing that I'm working on and the thing that I'm learning is that when I have when my body is telling me something, I listen. And so if I have resistance, when I'm like, okay, this is a no from my body, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to honor my body. And I recognize that for some people, that resistance is something you do have to push through. And it is something that you have to say, okay, this is fear speaking. This is the speaking. But what we need to do in all of those situations is say, okay, what is the resistance actually saying? Is the resistance saying, this is butting up against a fear that I have? Or is it saying, I need to not proceed at this time? And for me, sitting with it, that resistance really was, I need to not proceed with this at this time. And other times it really is, okay, I'm afraid of doing the thing, or I am resisting because I don't have all the pieces, and I'm one of those people who needs to have all the pieces. And so if I don't have those pieces, resistance is going to pop up and I'm not going to do the thing. And so, but I know that about myself, and I know to examine that and say, okay, what's really happening here? What does this mean? Why is this coming up? And again, is it something I need to honor in my body? Or is it something that I just need to say, you know what, body, I know you're scared, but we're in this together and we're going to do it. Or maybe it's a case of, I just need more information. And one of the things that's been coming up for me over the past few days is my divorce and my marriage and all of that. And I remember being in therapy with my ex, and our therapist was just like, Danica's kind of a prickly person. It's how she's wired. And so you need to know that when you give her something she's uncertain about, her immediate response is no. And rather than taking that as fight, you need to be like, okay, no, let's be curious about this. And he never did. We never, all the things the therapist asked us to do, I did to the best of my ability. He did not. And we'll just leave it there. But I'm sure he probably would have a different version of that. So, honoring that. But the thing that I thought was really interesting was that observation and recognizing in me that is oftentimes my natural instinct is, if it's new, if it's something I don't have certainty over, there is that immediate, ugh. And I'm learning to work through that. And I'm learning to say, okay, this is a new thing. It doesn't have to be scary. Okay, pause, let me think, then I will decide. And oftentimes, if I have that pause, let me think, and then I will decide, then I can make a better, rather than that no. And so it is a growth process, but part of that is for me being aware of, what does my resistance look like? And so when you're faced with something and you're noticing that you have resistance, the first thing to notice is, oh, I'm having resistance. And here's the part that I think we all need to do in our society, because we don't do enough of this. There's this automatic burr, 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 burr. But take a moment to just observe and notice and say, I'm experiencing resistance. I wonder what's going on with that. And really take a look. And what is that resistance telling you? Because it is telling you something. There's a message there. And maybe it is, I'm really tired and I need a nap before I can make this decision. Maybe it is, I just don't want to, which is also valid, by the way. I just don't want to is a valid answer. No is a complete sentence. Or maybe it is, I'm feeling uncertain about this thing. And again, for me, something new always brings up uncertainty, and I need time to evaluate whether or not, do this whole cost benefit analysis. Overthinkers Anonymous. I'm not so anonymous, but I'm learning that about myself, and I'm learning, okay, what is this about? Why am I doing this? Why do I feel this resistance? And some of it is just learning to trust, and learning to trust in your gut, and understanding what is important to you and what your values are, and all of those little things. And so going back to last week, where I was looking at all this anti-AI stuff, and I was talking very, very honestly about AI and what my approach has been. And like there's a lot AI can tell you, and there's a lot that it can do for you, but this internal intrinsic, what is really going on here? That's not a question AI can answer for you. Like, so funny enough, last night, there is a person in my life. I was just trying to figure out, what's the relationship doing? Where's it going? Trying to be cool. I'm not cool, by the way, totally not cool. And it was really funny because I pulled some tarot cards and I kind of sat with them. And there's this one card. I was like, I'm not really sure what is this about. And as I often do, particularly when I'm reading for myself, I do actually use AI to interpret my tarot cards. And what I find is it gives me a different perspective. Sometimes I like it better, sometimes I like mine better, and sometimes it's a nice blend. Most of the time it's a nice blend of, ooh, I didn't think of that, I didn't see that. And that is what I love AI for, is it just gives me that other perspective of things I don't see, but because I do have it very well trained on me, on the corpus of Danica, and my opinions and my thoughts and my beliefs, it also gives me another perspective that's in alignment with my beliefs. And I say that because at the end of the day, when I did that reading and I looked through it, it came back with something, and I can't even remember what, and I'm not going to look it up, but it came back with this idea of, well, you've been debating blah, blah, blah. And I went back to it and I said, no, that is not true, actually. I've never debated this specific thing that you're telling me right here. Here is the correct information. Please change this in your memory. And it was like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Okay, yes, boom, changed, done. And that is something that I do think we have to understand when you're working with AI, you're learning about AI, is that you have to still use your judgment and your discretion in it, even when you're taking something personal about your life, or, like, hey, is this thing with this guy going anywhere? Like, that's something that you have to still use your own judgment and your own discernment. And just because the AI says so doesn't mean it's right. And I read a lot of things written by AI that I know was written by AI that people have said, oh yeah, I read this with AI. And I'm like, yeah, I can tell. And I'm like, did you read this before you gave it to me? And they're like, oh, well, no, they didn't. And it shows. And there are still little pieces that are wrong. Like I said, Google took me to 3 different tea places in Ljubljana that don't exist. Still very angry about that one. But it was a good lesson for me to really, like, yes, use all the tools available, but sometimes it's up to you. And so the one tea place that it did correctly take me to, it was actually just a gift shop. You couldn't just go in and have tea. So that day that I had tea at Lake Bled that I just stumbled upon in my walks, that was actually the only tea shop I went to my whole trip. The only place I went and sat down and had tea. And it was an accidental discovery, which I think is hilarious because, like I said, like for me, when I'm planning my trip, I want to go have tea. I want to try the different teas. And I only accomplished that in one place. And that was an accident. And that's where I think we have to lean into our own humanity. Like I was talking about last week, in our humanity is understanding that it's both. And in some ways, by using AI and working with AI, it's augmenting your humanity and it's augmenting your discernment and picking up patterns, because I've been kind of discouraged the past few days, if I'm honest. I had a couple of triggers. I'll just say, yeah, I had some triggers come up, and I've sat with them and I've worked through them, and it was hard because, like, triggers aren't fun. They aren't pleasant. But this tea is very pleasant. Actually, it's really nice because usually the hibiscus is the strongest, but the citrus in this is the strongest, I think, because it has lemon and orange. I don't know. But anyway, but like there I was super triggered, and I've sat with that. And there are some things that I knew I should do to make me feel better. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I knew I could do to make me feel better. And I chose not to. Like, there was so much resistance. And I was like, why is this resistance here? Why am I struggling with this? And I do think part of it is that it's just such a tender place in me right now. And I was like, I just need to sit with this tenderness and tend to my tenderness and not go do a bunch of stuff. Because that is how I would typically deal with things and deal with my emotions is, okay, big emotion coming up. Okay, what project can I go work on now? And I've been resisting that. Isn't that funny? Like, I've been resisting my avoidance, but it's still resistance. And it's still something that I can say, okay, what's really going on here? And why is this happening? And, you know, with AI, I know it's confusing. I know it's hard. And I know there are a lot of things with AI that aren't wonderful. I tend to have oh, this is all the rosy thing. But sure, there are some really bad and scary things happening with AI. But as I mentioned in previous things, that it's here and I'm going to learn to use it for as much of my benefit as I can, because the billionaires out there, they don't care. The billionaires who are, I just actually read this article that was like all the people who have made millions and billions. Like, AI has launched new billionaires in the world economy. And part of me is like, but what keeps them up at night is not Danica sitting behind her computer trying to do the best she can with her life. And for me, it's like, okay, then great. How do I use what's available to me to do what I can to make my life the best it can be? And the billionaires aren't going to solve that for me. The government sure as hell isn't going to solve that for me. And so what can I do for me? And how can I bring a community of people around me that are going to do that for me? And I don't want to say for me, because ultimately it's my responsibility, but who's going to support me and how am I going to support other people? And that's why I'm choosing this path that I'm on, and I'm choosing to be pro AI. But I'm also choosing to really lean into those things that make me human and that make us human. And that is our discernment. That is our ability to read through things and not judge, okay, did AI make this or not? But is this good? Is this factual? Is this correct? Is this a viewpoint I agree with? Is this in my voice? And I was just the other day trying to feed some stuff to AI to edit for me that I had dictated, and it completely changed the cadence. It did the AI thing of like sentence, new paragraph, sentence, new paragraph, sentence, sentence, new paragraph, 3 sentences, new paragraph, sentence, new paragraph, sentence, and like all disjointed. And I was like, hey, this isn't how I write. Go back, look at how I write, and fix this. And the AI, AI was like, oh yeah, sorry. And it did, and it fixed it. And I said, do what you need to do to update your memory that this is my preference. But it's this constant back and forth and communication and saying, this is what I want. And this is how I want you to do something. And having that human control and that human judgment is so important. And that's why you have to also take a look at those things. Like, what are your triggers? What are you working through? What is the resistance you're working through? And how are those blind spots? How are those things that maybe you don't see? And how can you get some help in seeing that? And sometimes it is talking to a friend. And sometimes it's pulling up a chat in ChatGPT and saying, chat, what am I missing here? Where is my blind spot? What do I need to work on? And that's why I love it with writing is, okay, I thought of this thing. What is the blind spot in it? And it's like, oh yeah, here's what you missed. And then I can go like, oh, cool, here's what you missed. And it is collaborative and it is working together. And it does require a deeper level of critical thinking than it is to simply say, nope, I'm not going to use AI. It's more about how will I critically think about what I've been given from AI. And how do I evaluate what I'm given? I posted a note earlier this week about this event that I saw advertised on Facebook that looked super fun. It was an Asian festival that's happening in September. I might go, but I have something else going on around that same time. So I'm not sure if it's worth like buying tickets for it and all that. Like, so I'm going to wait until we get closer and see. But it was just so interesting. Like the people that were just automatically dismissing it because the ad itself was made with AI. Like it was like the image for the ad was made with AI, but it was a really cute image. And knowing graphic design stuff that I don't know, but knowing what I've paid for it or had other designers do for me, I can tell you that that's kind of a complicated design. And so now AI just does it. And I think that's wonderful that it just saved a bunch of time and it saved having to find a graphic designer and all of that. And I understand graphic designers, you're like, yes, but we need work. Of course you do. But here's the thing is that you need the work, but not everyone can pay you your rates. And also not everyone knows you're out there. Like there's all of these different pieces that go along with it. And honestly, I still pay graphic designers for stuff. I still will send all my AI stuff and be like, okay, fix it, make it look nice. And that is because I'm not a graphic designer and I don't always know what I should be doing. And so think about like those kinds of things and that decision-making skill and the thought process of looking at something and evaluating, is this good? Is this doing the job I need it to do? Do I need to bring in additional help on this? And so going back to this event, like there were these people who were like, I'm refusing to, I won't go to an event that uses AI. And I'm thinking, but okay, it's an event. It's actual people in this park and they're serving Asian food. And I'm pretty sure none of that's done with AI. I don't know though. It would be super cool if AI could make dinner. I do use ChatGPT a lot for recipes and stuff because I've had some pretty interesting diet restrictions and a lot of the recipes that I like, I'm like, I don't know how to make this so I can eat it. And so I put the recipe into ChatGPT and I say, what can I substitute? And it tells me. And all that to say, like, here are these people and they are completely abdicating their critical thinking, their preferences, their taste, anything that might possibly be interesting to them because there's one little factor that they don't like. And here's the crazy part about it is it's not going to keep the organizer from canceling the event. No one's going to cancel an event because you didn't show up because it used AI. It's going to draw in the people who don't mind AI, who want to eat yummy Asian food in the park. And so you've just removed a potentially really cool event from your life because you don't want an AI image. And again, like I said last week, okay, so that's triggering you. Why? What about it is so triggering to you? Why are you facing this resistance? Where do you need to deal with some of your unhealed stuff? Because that's all it is. You know, when I was saying that I was triggered earlier, and I've just been kind of in this weird headspace over the past couple of days, ultimately that's my responsibility. And the person who triggered me, they're off living their life. They have no idea that I have been in this state. They don't know, and they don't care. obviously if you said to me, hey, you triggered me with this, I will take an appropriate level of responsibility. A friend of mine just, I guess the week before last, she was telling a couple of us about this person who messaged her about something she'd said in one of her posts that they thought was really triggering. And, and they felt, you use this terminology that isn't right and this and that. And actually, the person, my friend, was using it correctly and was very kind and said, I appreciate you're sending me your feedback. However, I'm using it appropriately. Here's some information to show you why that this is correct. So my friend was like overly nice in explaining her position. And this person came back and was just so angry and mad and frustrated. And ultimately, like, I think that they just kind of ended the conversation at a stalemate because my friend was like, look, you're trying to get me to change what I've written about this thing. And I disagree with you. So no. And, the person's like, I've lost all respect for you. And okay, cool. Great. Did my friend want this person's respect? Probably not. And this person, I've been thinking a lot about this person. And we had some conversation around it and around like different people's triggers and what people perceive and things like that. And the example that I used is, you'll see somebody parking in the handicap spot and they have the handicap tag and you're like, but they don't look handicapped. And so like immediately there's this judgment of, well, why are you parking in the handicap spot? You're not handicapped. And it was funny because I used that example and one of my friends chimes in. She's like, yeah, I have a handicap sticker and I get that all the time. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that. But like we don't know these things about people, and we don't know that this seemingly able-bodied person parking in the handicap spot might have something else going on that you can't see in that moment, but for them, having that handicap spot is really important. And so there's all of these perspectives that we're not looking at and taking into account. And I keep going back to this. It's so weird. Like the further I get from church, the more I'm like digging into like Bible stuff. And because I still really do love Jesus and I still really follow that kind of teaching. I'm just not so fond of how the church has twisted it into something that it's not meant to be. And I still constantly go back to this idea of Jesus telling this person, before you take the plank out of someone's eye, go inspect this, before you take the speck out of someone else's eye, take the plank out of your own eye. And I'm so focused on looking at the plank in my eye that I don't care what the specks in other people's eyes are. I care when you're out, berating other people and being mean to people and yanking at their planks, and like picking at their specks in their eyes. And yeah, that bothers me. But otherwise, I'm just busy doing my own stuff. I'm looking at my own triggers. I'm looking at areas where I am feeling like, ooh, what's this resistance about? And if I trigger someone, again, if it's something that I don't know, like I can take responsibility for my role in that, because I certainly would never intentionally want to hurt someone or something like that. But there's also a piece of, okay, can you take a look at your trigger? Can you look at why this was so upsetting to you and how you want to work through it? I had a friendship end we were at a friend's house. We were doing like outdoor movie night. It was really fun. And my friend made a comment like, yeah, I look just like my dad and blah, blah, blah. And like, I was like, oh, well, now we know what your dad looks like. And like, just, just a simple toss away comment about, oh, you look like your dad. Um, and my friend like sent me this really long text about how mean and cruel and insensitive I was to talk about their dad. And I'm like, whoa, 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 wait. Okay. You're the one who brought it up. I was really just trying to affirm what you were saying and be funny. Obviously that didn't land. I'm sorry. And then this person just kept like, how dare you? You're such a bad person. I can't believe you would do that, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I'm really sorry. I will not talk about your dad. But like this level of anger isn't me. Like, this is not something I said or did. This triggered something in you that you've got to deal with. And like the rage that came out at me, and this is kind of just a very summary of the conversation, but the rage that came out from this person towards me was really intense. And I was just like, I really am sorry that I hurt you. You're a good friend. I really care about you. I'm not sure what else to do here. And this person was like, yeah, you're right. This is all me. And I'm like, I didn't say that. I am trying to accept responsibility for the fact that I did hurt you. Like, I'm sorry, I really am. But I don't know what to do with this at this point, because like, I don't know. And, you just keep throwing all this anger and rage on me that I don't feel like I deserve. But I'm willing to work through this with you. And, and this friend just came back. Well, obviously it's something I've got to deal with on my own. I'm like, okay, cool. And this person has never spoken to me again. Like, I saw them, maybe a couple months after that. And, like, they just absolutely refused to speak to me. I was like, hey, how are you? And they like just looked at me blankly and then turned and walked away. And I was like, okay, but that's them, and that's their trigger and their stuff. And again, if this person came to me and said, hey, I just want to revisit this conversation. What you said about my dad, it was really hurtful. Here's what I needed from you. Like, is there a way we could work through this? I would be like, yes, absolutely. And honestly, if that person had come to me in the beginning and just been like, wow, that thing that you said to me about my dad was really, really hurtful, I would, would have been, okay, cool. But it was like, you hurt me, you're a bad person, this, like all of this stuff about me and how bad I was. And I'm like, it's not me, sorry. And I don't have a problem with taking responsibility. Like I said, like I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry that was insensitive. All of the things. And this person just needed me to be a bad guy. I still don't know, but, I think about that a lot. And I think about the things where people say that they've been triggered by somebody else. And I'm like, but how are you learning from that? Like, what is that lesson? And for me, when I get triggered by somebody, it's like, okay, well, wait, let me just sit with this before, even with all of the AI stuff that's been going around lately. And I had like a friend like post something. It was very thoughtful and great, and like all the commenters just piled on with their anti-AI sentiment. And I was like, whoa, okay, I'm not engaging at all with this because I'm going to protect my peace. And before I started responding to any of the anti-AI stuff and putting stuff out there, I sat with it and I really thought about it. And I was like, okay, what can I say that's useful or thoughtful or going to add to the conversation, and isn't just me like raging about it. And And so that's what I did. And not perfectly, because I mean, I still had some ragey moments, and I still have some ragey moments. But like, what is that rage saying? And it isn't about suppressing or denying that rage. It's not about pretending it's not there. But like, what is that rage trying to tell you? Where is that rage inside your body, and how do you work with your body and deal with what you're feeling, and how do you actually process that? Because honestly, you know, I think back to that former friend that like came at me. Ultimately, for them, it probably did feel good to just like dump all that stuff on me. But they still haven't dealt with whatever that issue is. And maybe they have, because we haven't spoken in so long, you know, but like, they haven't dealt with, like, again, let's just pretend, you know, but they haven't dealt with what that thing is. And so the next time somebody says something to them that reminds them of whatever thing that got triggered about their dad, then they're just going to go off again. And I look at this and I see, you know, people who are watching the news all the time. They've got CNN or Fox News on 24/7, depending on where you are on the spectrum. Like, it's like a lot. And every single thing that I'm seeing in these people is like, they're like this rage. And they're just boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, but can you stop and think about this? Like, pause, turn off the news. And that's kind of what I ended up doing this weekend, is just unplugging from a lot of things. I binge watched a show on Amazon, Ride or Die. It's hilarious. It's got, now I don't remember the two leads in it. Hilarious. Look it up. It was so good. But I did stuff like that. I binged TV shows that made me happy, that made me smile. I didn't engage with the media. Honestly, if World War III has broken out over the weekend, I wouldn't know, because I haven't looked. And that's really intentional. It's for me, intentionally unplugging those things, because yeah, you know, we have to work with our triggers, but we also don't need to live in a constantly triggered thing, in a constantly triggered state. And our nervous system wasn't meant to do that. And so what I also figured out, especially like with the news and stuff, there isn't anything I can do about it. And so I'm going to just be mad. And so I took a break. I'm taking a break. So yeah, anything good happens in the news, let me know. Anything bad, I'll probably figure it out at some point. But yeah, so just take some time to figure out like what is going on. Like I said, I've been kind of sitting in this weird state for the past couple of days. I did leave my house yesterday because I had to go buy groceries. I forgot a couple things. I think I have to leave my house again today and buy them. Or not. I'm trying to decide how badly I want something. But ultimately, it's me deciding to take care of myself. And I want to encourage you. I know we only have a few more hours left of Sunday, and then you've got to go back to work tomorrow if you work. But you've got to go back to the normal Monday through Friday, whatever you do Monday through Friday. But if you have some time to just relax and take a break from everything, do that. And then, you know, when you're facing resistance or you're facing a trigger, take a moment and pause. Ask yourself what's really going on and what do you need? Like I said, for me this weekend, I just needed to unplug and hide away from the world, and that's what I did. And I'm pretty happy about that. So I may not be happy when I check my cupboard tomorrow morning, but that's another story, and that's a later problem. So I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday, and let me know if like you're thinking about different things with your resistance or your triggers, and let me know like if there's any way I can support you or anything you want to talk through. or if you just are also working on those same things. I'd love to hear about it, and I will see you again next week.